It's time for another Sit and Talk FAQ. Today's question comes from Miso, where he's asking me the history of MiniWarGaming. And for example, how Dave and I met, all the way up to how MiniWarGaming got started, and then maybe a little bit about where it is at right now. This is a question I have received several times, so I think it's time to make an FAQ of it so that I can refer people to that. Of course, if you want to watch the rest of the Sit and Talk, then you can click on the link below to go to the Sit and Talk show. So, how did we get started? First off, how did Dave and I meet? Well, I can't remember exactly how old we were when we met, but we were rather young. We both go to the same church. We're both members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, known as Mormons. And his family and my family were friends. And so, when we were young teenagers, he's 3 years younger than me, so I think he was like 11 and I was 14 when we first really started hanging out. And what happened is we lived out in the country, and we had a big shop. My dad is a carpenter and a contractor by trade, and Dave's father for one summer was bringing in his van and his car, and he was doing body work and stuff on it. And so he was there, and this is summer when we're off of school, and so he was there quite a bit. And so Dave would come with him, and we would hang out. And we started, our very first miniature war game, which we never realized back then wasn't even a miniature war game, was Battletech. And Battletech was such a fun game. We just loved it. I still have the original box set of Battletech that we were playing. I think it's second edition that we were playing. It might have even been first edition. Who knows? Battletech is a hex-based game where you have big battle mechs, big anime-style robots, and you actually had like a full piece of paper where you kept track of the damage they took and all their systems and their heat level. It was very, very involved and a lot of fun. And we played that a lot. And we also played role-playing games. The very first role-playing game we ever played was called Advanced Fighting Fantasy. Fighting Fantasy was actually created by the same creators of Games Workshop, which is kind of interesting because we didn't realize that until later on. But like Fighting Fantasy was actually a set of novels which are like choose your own adventure, except that you actually would roll dice and fight monsters and stuff, and it was really neat. And then you had Advanced Fighting Fantasy, which was like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a very, very simplistic system. So I started GMing that with my friends, with my brothers, and with Dave. So we grew up like that. We grew up playing all these types of games together. So that's how we met. That's how we knew each other. So we were good friends all growing up. And then about 10 years ago, I started my own business in internet marketing. So I was doing marketing consulting and teaching people how to market their business online, because it was a relatively new thing back then, which is crazy to think. And about 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago, Dave approached me. He was running a landscaping business at the time, and he was successful at it, but he really didn't like it, like at all. He just didn't like the work, but even though he was good at it. And he approached me and said, "I'm really sick of landscaping. Is there anything that we could do together? Is there a business we could start together?" And this would have happened, about 10 years ago, because I had just recently, 7 years ago, gotten into Lord of the Rings, the miniatures game made by Games Workshop. And I had found out about that because my wife and I were in Burlington, and we had some time to kill, and so we went into the mall, and there was a Games Workshop there. I walked into Games Workshop, and I thinking it was just some sort of gaming store that would have role-playing games and all that kind of stuff. And as soon as I walked in and saw Warhammer, I turned around, I was about to walk out, till this little guy named Spencer comes up to me, and he says, hey, he just started talking to me, and I told him I'm not really interested in Warhammer. I think I've seen it before, and really my only impression of Warhammer was years before. And I was in a gaming store, Games a Lot, in Seaway Mall, and they had a big box set of Warhammer Fantasy. That's all they sold, was this box set. And I was there, and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And somebody else pointed out, "Oh, that's this game where you have like 200 miniatures, and you spend like an entire day just setting up to play one battle, and then you spend like another day playing that one battle." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds horrible." So that was my only impression of Warhammer. It was just something that I was not interested in. But the Spencer guy, he says, "Okay, yeah, I get it. I'm not actually hugely into Warhammer either. However, do you like Lord of the Rings?" And I said, "I love Lord of the Rings. My wife loves we're huge I don't know if we're still huge Lord of the Rings fans. Like, we love it, but we haven't really, I wouldn't say we're fanatics. But back then we'd watched the movie several times and read the books and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, we were totally excited about that. So he brought us to the back of the store. Not a big store, it's just in the mall. And he showed us the wall of Lord of the Rings miniatures, and he showed us his Lord of the Rings collection of elves and I think he had dwarves and goblins, and I fell in love with that right away. I walked out of there having spent about $150 on a Mines of Moria set and a bunch of paint. That was back in the day when the Mines of Moria set was like $80. And then the rest of it was just paints and other products. And I really got into it. Like, I spent tons of money on it in the first couple of months that I got into it, building Lord of the Rings armies. I was buying lots of armies off of eBay. And I got Dave into the game too. And that's who I primarily played against. And then so when he approached me saying, I'd like to start a business together, and I said, well, we've got this miniature wargaming stuff, and I'm in internet marketing, and one of the things I've always been interested in is e-commerce. And there's this YouTube thing that's kind of new, and video marketing. That's right, YouTube was kind of new back then. It wasn't like what it is right now. And so I've always thought it'd be kind of interesting to start doing video marketing. So we make videos about products, and then we have an e-commerce store, so an online store where we sell those products. And we like this miniature wargaming thing, so it could be about that. And heck, on the top of that, we get the advantage of getting the miniature wargaming stuff at wholesale. So it's like double advantage. We get to buy stuff at a discount, and we get to make videos about something that we enjoy and make a business out of it. So we decided to do that, and MiniWarGaming was born. We kind of hashed over a few different names. The little interesting side fact here, I was so into search engine optimization back then that the domain name, like basically the name of the company had to be the domain name .com. It had to be. There was no exception. I wasn't going to accept like a dash or a .net or anything like that, because in the end people would type .com. Even if you tell them .net, they'll still type in .com half the time. And so I was looking for a URL that would be very search engine friendly. So I wanted miniaturewargaming.com, but that was taken. And it still is, miniaturewargaming.com. I think it's all about historical gaming. And so instead we went with MiniWarGaming. So we were actually going to be called Miniature Wargaming, not MiniWarGaming. And so I'm kind of glad, looking back, that was a fortunate thing that was already taken, because MiniWarGaming is way more, it rolls off your tongue a lot better than Miniature Wargaming. Hi, I'm Matthew from Miniature Wargaming. It's just like miniature wargaming is what we play. MiniWarGaming, some people call it MiniWarGaming, but most people will call it wargaming or miniature wargaming. So MiniWarGaming kind of becomes our business name. So we did that, and so that's how the business got started. Our very first video was a YouTube video contest where you had to submit a video, and if you won, you got like $500 in gift certificate to our online store. And so it was a big expense because we just started, and it was rather rough. It took us 10 months before we really made any money. Now I had my other business that was going, and so it kind of funded this one, so that was okay. And it kind of just went from there. The rest of it would take a lot longer to talk about the past few years, but really it grew. And my phone is on. Turn that off. Thought I had turned it off. And it grew, and the vault grew, and eventually the store got shut down, and the vault grew even more, and now where we are right now. But it was definitely hard. It probably took a good 3 years before we got to a point where it was making us enough money to have comfortable salaries from it, because I had to rely on the other business. And eventually I shut down the other business because I kind of spent more and more time on MiniWarGaming and less time on the other one, until eventually, probably about 2 years ago, just 2 years ago, I finally totally cut that business off. Because I had some software products where I actually had customers who were paying monthly for the software product. And so I stopped marketing that. And so it slowly lost customers, because, nobody stays forever. And if you're not constantly adding new customers, then you'll slowly go back down to zero. And we kind of hit a point where I'm like, okay, we can just shut it down. And the remaining members, this is closing down now. And that was it. And that's it. That's the history of MiniWarGaming in a nutshell. So end FAQ.